back to the channel. This will be, or has been, my watch list for the past week or so of films and documentaries that I've seen over the past while, and it's been a bit of a different week this week, as you'll see. First up is the Eureka release of The Specialist, or Gli Specialista, something like that anyway. A film, western by Sergio Corbucci, a spaghetti western, and I enjoyed this. I have to say the main character of Hud as a hero that should have spawned a lot more movies. He's a great and interesting character, although how they treated him in this movie probably tells a story of why there aren't more films that follow this up. But Hud is a man who returns back to the scene of where his brother was killed and murdered in what seems to be a bit of a corrupt town, between the usual story from westerns of corrupt officials within the city, and in this case a female who runs the bank, who seems to use her feminine wiles to her own advantage when she sees fit. And she has a bit of a history with Hud, and a lot of the characters have a bit of a history with Hud, as he has allies within the town as well. And it's a good example of a spaghetti western. It's a very good looking western, as they use the locales very well. I mean, there's gorgeous snow-topped mountains in the background of an awful lot of the shots, and there's the vistas, and the restoration itself are all fantastic. There is an English track on this, but apparently it's not great, so I watched the subtitles with Italian. Not a problem. I enjoyed it immensely. Next up, a Georges Franju film called Spotlight on a Murder. I had to check Spotlight on, Spotlight of a Murder. It gives me vibes of Knives Out, insofar that there is a bit of a murder mystery in a big fancy house. I mean, that's probably as far as the links to Knives Out goes, but this basically tells a story of a count who dies. The family turn up to see who gets the inheritance, and they find out that they can't find the body. I mean, you're told very early where the body is, where it is throughout the whole page, so that isn't a mystery. But the problem with that is they can't get the inheritance, and they can't sell the house, and they can't get this fortune that's there until 5 years have passed. So they have to think about how they are going to pay the upkeep and the rates, etc., of the house between them, while this 5-year period goes on. And as the 5-year period goes on, they decide to basically use the house as a tourist attraction. So they do walk tours, and they put infrastructure in to enable them to do them. But as that goes, members of the family, of which there's a large extended family, some bad things start to happen to them, and they start being whittled down. And then it becomes, well, what is happening to them, or who is doing it? Is one of the family responsible? Is it outside forces? And it gets this bit of intrigue or thriller involved in what is another good example of a French kind of thriller, in the style of like a Clouseau or something, you know. And I enjoyed it. I mean, I have to say there's some quite memorable scenes in it, but there's also a lot of it kind of runs together as being standard fare for that kind of genre film. But if you like that kind of genre film, I definitely think it's one worth checking out. And there it is, Spotlight on a Murder. Next up was a real treat. It's the Aero Academy release of America as Seen by Frenchmen, which is a documentary from 1960. Now, I looked to see what happened in even European cinema in 1960. And 1960 is just this storied list of incredible films. Breathless came out in 1960. The Dolce Vita came out in 1960. Rocco and His Brothers came out in 1960. There's an endless amount of great movies that came out in 1960. And this was one of them. So it is a documentary by Francois Reichenbach, and he started at the west coast of America and started to make his way east over the period of about 10 months and filmed what he could see as he went along there. And as you'd expect, as somebody who's not indigenous to America, he tended to focus on the weird and wonderful and maybe downright crazy bits of American culture that stood out to him. He talks about some of their industry, etc. as well. He talks about how marketing seems to have a very strong influence on the entire country. And you got to think back, this is back in 1960. So a lot of what they do is about image and projection. Now, he doesn't judge in it. He just presents these kind of little vignettes of of what he sees and what he's filmed. There's also a really nice piece that I like when he talks about the American farming industry. He says it's a land of 9 million farmers, but no peasants. As there's just this, it's a machinery, both in terms of metaphor and of actual machinery, that makes the American farming industry go, and how he sees the combine harvesters as basically giant insects that basically do all the work for them. There's lots of other little vignettes that are about, you know, parenting courses for men. You get a certificate and you're ready to be a father now because you have a certificate because you held a plastic doll. It's a bit ridiculous. There's a convention for twins where everybody has to arrive suitably attired so that you can't spot the difference between two sets of twins because they're all dressed the same. There's also a bit of a deep dive into some of the darker sides of American culture, so the prison culture and about teenage delinquency. And it did strike me as I was watching it that it was weird that he get access to some of these places, but apparently, and this is in the extras, that he said it wasn't that hard. All he had to do was show nude photos of Bridget Bardot, and he could basically get into anything and anywhere that he wanted to see, which I found rather hilarious and very believable at the same time. It's narrated by a male and a female, so it's interchanged as it goes between the two of them, but it's also got this incredible, and I mean incredible, soundtrack by Michel Legrand, and he actually gets equal billing on the front cover as music by alongside the director, and I think it's justified because it's a fabulous soundtrack, and the film would be much the less without it. I just found this an absolute joy to watch of the 90 minutes or so that it ran. It has an interesting take in the film with a film historian at the end, and yeah, I hardly recommend it. It's one of the new releases from Aero Academy, and yeah, definitely check it out. In fitting with what I've been doing in the past couple of weeks as well, I've kind of gone down a bit of a rabbit hole, a documentary rabbit hole, and I started to pick up some of the BFI other documentary series. Now there are some that are on Blu-ray, etc., the public information films or the COI films, but I picked up this one, which is Shadows of Progress, and it talks about documentary film in post-war Britain from 51 to 77. Now there's a companion one that runs from 1930 to 1950 that I have on the way because I've enjoyed this so much, and it is a DVD set, and it comes with a very nice booklet alongside the DVDs themselves, so a pretty thick booklet that tells you what the films are made up about. And I've watched the first of 4 discs, and I don't know if everybody will find this, but as somebody who grew up in a British culture from they were a kid, there's lots of things that stand out to me. So some of the films, the first film is called David, but really David, because he tells the story of a Welsh caretaker in a school who looks after a lot of the kids until tragedy befalls him as well, and about how the positive impact that he has had on other people spreads to the other people that are around him. There are tales about the last trams running in London, which is particularly fascinating because you see the trams going through, but the after effects of the war are still there. A lot of these films have been blown up and are in pieces around them, but the trams are going through. It follows an old couple as they travel through the last day of the trams in London, and then culminates in a party. Really, really fascinating stuff. There's one on, you know, maybe a bit more preachy, so on why you should be careful before you have more kids. So it's about a counselling service that helps people decide whether they are right to have more kids or whether their family should stop at a certain size. And you know, it's a bit preachy, but really interesting that was a thing at the time. None of them were overly long as it goes. There's a really interesting one about kids. So kids from poor and impoverished areas were taken by the NSPCC on a day to the sea, and it charts their journey as they go wrong. And there's very little dialogue except for the odd bit where the child tells them about how their day's been. I mean, there may only be about 10-15 lines of dialogue in the whole 25-minute documentary, but it gives it that little bit of perspective, that bit of realism. So as they go on the train and they go on the funfair and they play in the sea and they throw stones and they get candy floss and they get gifts away. The wife even watched it with me and said, you know, remarked about how interesting it was, and even when they went for something food, to get fish and chips for their tea, but they had what looked like the Angel Delight or something with a big cherry in the middle, but a lot of the kids were shown to be eating it and busy hurling at the prospect of eating any more of it. And there are lots of lots of little things like that. There's even a documentary on foot and mouth, signs of foot and mouth, around that time, and how devastating it can be within the context of the country. So I can't wait to make my way through the rest of this. Because they're all such short watches, I can go through a lot of them. Like the first disc alone has 10 different little pieces. The other thing that strikes me about it is it's only a DVD set, but maybe it's because of the upscaling nature of the player that I have, but it's hard to tell that it's DVD. In many ways, I can't imagine them looking that much better on a high definition disc. They're all mostly in 4:3, so they're squashed anyway. So yeah, I really recommend the set, and I can't wait to get through the rest of this and also see the ones previously, because it gives me a bit of insight into things that I knew and grew up with, but you know, seeing those things true to life at the time is really something to see. And then last but not least, I decided to dig into one of my box sets. I was trying to think about doing a little list of top movies that I've ever seen live, not order them or anything, but then I realised that while I'd seen some of these directors' movies, I can't remember a thing about any of them. So I thought I'd dig into this Alfred Hitchcock set that I have, and I mean, honestly, this thing is gorgeous at the best of times anyway. So I watched the first one that I went for, which was the first colour one, which was Rope, with the aforementionedly great James Stewart, who plays a bit of a different role in this. Tells the story of a murder happening, and then of the two protagonists. I don't think it's made clear whether they're related or whether they're just friends. I think they're just friends from university days. As they try to cover it up, they hold a house party where dead person's parents are invited to. Everybody's invited to, all his family and friends, but he's in the trunk and the dead in the front, and it's about their attempts to get away with it, and then the unravelling of that as it goes. Maybe a bit predictable. I thought one of the extra features in it, which was great, which was the documentary about the making of Rope, where the screenwriter tells that he wanted the story to be not that you see and know the body's in the trunk, but whether there's a body in the trunk. And I think that would have made the film, taking it up just that other level. It's already a great movie. This kind of, like, I rewatched 1917 this week with a family. This feels like it wants to be a one-shot movie as well, except as it turns out the film only lasted for 10 minutes, so they definitely couldn't do that. If they had been able to, you'd have done it in one shot. So you see the bits where it cuts into somebody's back and then pulls out from somebody's back, so you can see where they made the cut, but it is all done in one set pretty much, and it kind of flows about as characters move about. It's a wonderfully made movie, and one that I can't wait to see more of, and I have got a lot more movies to get through in this set, but I can't wait. So that's all that I've watched. I made a couple of pickups that I'll tell you about, a couple of special pickups. I ordered a couple of Region A Criterion sets that I've had my eye on for a while but couldn't get a decent price on, especially imported over here. I think I've mentioned this before. As a Region A collector of Criterion, sometimes you just have to jump on something that you've seen, and I know Nathan Jones has talked about this set a lot. It's Lost and Found, the BBS story, which has all of the movies, of which I have one above, which is Easy Rider, but Head, The King of Marvin Gardens, Last Picture Show, Drive, He Said, A Safe Place, and 5 Easy Pieces. That is that set, which I hope to make my way through over the summer months. And on top of that is another one that I've picked up, similar breed, and it's one that Ellie Cohen had been making his way through, I think, much earlier in the year, and it's the David Lean set, directional card, and it has Brief Encounter, Blithe Spirit, This Happy Breed, In Which We Serve. So I kind of went a bit nuts and got those because they were both available without importing from America and not on an extortionate price, so I picked them up. You can see this probably one has been resealed, I think. Maybe not. I mean, it is sealed, but it shows some wear and tear on the outside. It's either been sitting on somebody's shelf or otherwise, but yeah, really glad they picked that up, and we'll make my way through over the next couple of weeks and months, just like I said before. So let me know what you've been watching. Have you seen any of those titles? Some of them I suspect not, because they're a bit of a hodgepodge or mixed bag, so to speak. And let me know how things have been going for yourself. The lockdown's coming to an end. I have to say, in my own case, it's been nice to see myself track through the videos of going from having very little hair to seeing my hair coming back. I think just in time for me to say, let's get it all off again, even if the hairdressers are open. Thanks for watching. Take care. I'll speak to you soon. All the best. Bye.